Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for missing part of the earlier part of the hearing. I'm very interested and concerned, as are citizens in my district, constituents all throughout the country, on this issue and what it's doing to the flora and the fauna of the Gulf region. The entire United States of America will be affected by this, but particularly the Gulf States regions, which border my city of Memphis. New Orleans is like a sister city, and we consider the Gulf Coast as part of our world. It's part of all of our worlds. We need to be concerned. So if I ask any questions that have been asked before, I apologize. First, I'd like to ask, I guess, Mr. McKay, Mr. Newman, if you know the answer, help me with it. This dome that y'all came up with that you brought down after about three, 4 weeks and failed, when did y'all come up with that concept?
That particular cofferdam, that particular one, it's been modified, was used in prior spills in shallow water.
So it was not a unique process, it was just that the depth it was...
the depth is different, and the issue with it in terms of why it didn't work on first try was that hydrates formed.
It froze, right. The water got in there. And so why didn't you have some study done on what would, if that would have worked, or done some research to see that it would have worked, or precautions to have made that work at depths of 5,000 feet, since you have wells at that depth and many more deeper? What was done before to make sure that would work?
Well, of course, we don't know the specific fluid until the well's drilled, and we're still learning about the fluid. So that particular fluid is a very unique fluid in that it has very high gas, and it has a propensity for forming hydrates at that depth.
And when you say the fluid, you mean what's coming out of the earth right now and polluting the Gulf of Mexico?
Yes. Yes.
Why didn't you try something? I mean, couldn't you have used? You took that fluid out of the earth and you put it in your boats and you sold it. Couldn't you have used that fluid? Or maybe I'm wrong because I'm not a chemist, but couldn't you have used that to test it and find out if it worked?
Well, this particular well is the first well drilled on that structure ever. And what I'm really trying to say is the fluid's unique. The technology was used in shallow water. It's not been used offshore in 5,000 feet of water. It was difficult to predict what hydrate formation with that fluid at that depth.
There was no way to simulate it?
We did simulate, and in fact, we said we're worried about hydrates.
And so you worried, but you didn't simulate it enough to know that there was a way to get around it. Let me ask you this. You right now got a hose you stuck in there, and it's siphoning off whatever, 1,000, 2,000, whatever. When did you come up with that concept?
Within the first couple of weeks in terms of an idea.
Why didn't you have this idea 2 years ago?
Well, we have a unique situation here. I don't think anybody could have predicted that we have a blowout preventer that didn't work, a lower marine riser package on top of it, 4,300 feet of riser that is damaged and trenched in the Gulf of Mexico. So what we had to devise was a system. We had to fabricate it and build it that can fit inside that pipe with drill pipe inside it and rubber diaphragms that can help keep the water out. That is an entirely unique situation with where this leak is happening.
Don't you think you should have envisioned the worst possible case scenario when you're dealing with an ecosystem that is unique and special and so important to the people, let alone the flora and the fauna? And shouldn't have you thought of the worst possible case scenario and prepared for it and had this type of technology on day one going down there? Why do you have to wait for a calamity to occur to come up with, oh, what should we do now?
Well, respectfully, I don't think we've been doing that. We've been working parallel paths since the first moments has happened. First, to actuate the blowout preventer, if we could possibly do it. We worked for 10 days trying to do that. Parallel to that, and simultaneous.
Mr. McKay, I understand this. I'm talking about a year ago. Why didn't you envision the worst possible case scenario that all this stuff would happen? And what do we do if there's a gap 5,000 feet down and this oil is just going out?
As I've said, we predicate that a blowout preventer is either going to work, can be manually intervened with if not, or can be approached if not. We've got a unique situation where we've had this thing on top of it that was supposed to release and it didn't. So therefore, we're having to engineer solutions that are in a very unique situation. Very unique situation. And I don't believe that could be predicted by anyone. Now, what I would say is we are learning a lot through this, and I think the subsea capability and the generic and some of the specific capability the industry needs to put in place and the regulators need to look at, I believe we'll learn through this, and I believe we're going to need to do some of that.
Can you assure me that the Atlantis rig that some thinks may be questionable, and an expert engineer who, I don't know if he used to work for y'all or not, has questioned that it is secure and doesn't need some type of review?
The Atlantis is a production platform. There have been some allegations made that all the drawings weren't there. We did an internal study, and I understand, I haven't reviewed it in detail, but I understand all the drawings were there to safely start up and operate that platform, as well as meeting regulations. The MMS is looking into that. We've done an internal investigation, an ombudsman's investigation, and the MMS is going to look into it, which we welcome and will fully cooperate.
Senator Inhofe said that if we increase from $75 million to $10 billion the liability of the major oil companies, that this would be a mistake because it would cause small oil companies not to be able to afford to do this type of work. And he was concerned about them. Are you also concerned about them and think it's a bad idea?
I've not had time, nor have we talked internally about policy and limits. What we've said is in this incident, for us, we're going to fulfill our responsibilities as a responsible party. We believe that means, in this case, waiving that $75 million and standing behind all legitimate claims that due to this that will impact the environment and the economy of the folks that are affected. So I can't comment on specific legislation or specific caps.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your attitude. You've advertised BP and you've come before Judiciary Committee and others at other times and talked about your green perspectives. I would hope you'd put more emphasis on your green work. It's obvious when we use 25% of the Earth's fossil fuels, and yet we only have capacity to have 2% of them here. There's no way we can use fossil fuels to serve our energy needs in the future and to do it safely. We need to look at wind and we need to look at solar. And we need to have BP be a leader in emphasizing that and moving on where you won't have these type of catastrophes. You won't have these type of issues. And God forbid something like this happens in the Arctic. I want to see your hose and I want to see your dome. It ain't going to work up there. And they're not going to be able to do things to preserve that environment. You've already ruined the Gulf. I don't want you to see you ruin the rest of the world's oceans. Come up with the worst possible case scenario and figure out a way to do it. And if you got to put a man in a tube and stick him down there or a polar bear and teach him how to do it, you ought to do it. Thank you.